Okay, it's 11:33. We're going to call the meeting to order of the Construction Advisory and Bills Board of September 24, 2014. Before we get started, I would like to go through the members and introduce ourselves. Starting.
Dennis Hedrick, a local home builder, Hedrick Combs.
Justin Rakowski, local engineer. I work at Johnson & Pace.
Barry Lansford, owner First General Services, remodeler, fire restoration.
Richard Pirtle, builder in Longview.
Cody Martin, air conditioning heating company here in town.
Ann Hegman, I'm an architect.
Ben Shelton, I'm operations and facility manager for Pathway Church.
Okay. All right, first item on the agenda is consider the approval of the minutes from meeting on July 2nd, 2014. Did I hear first?
So moved.
I second it. Justin Rakowski.
Okay, motion approved. Second on the agenda, discussion, seeking the board approval to recommend the adoption 2014 International Building Codes and 2014 National Electric Codes. First, I'd like to introduce Michael Shirley to come speak.
Thank you, Mr. Pirtle, members of the board. I'm Michael Shirley. I'm the Director of Development Services. And what I'd like to do today is just kind of talk about what we're doing here. We're kind of coming back around full circle of where we started many months ago, as you may remember when we first presented this to you. What we're asking for consideration today is to consider adopting the 2012 International Building Code, the International Residential Code, the 2012 Fire Code, the Plumbing Code, Mechanical, Fuel Gas, and the existing Building Code, as well as the 2011 National Electric Code. Those are the code families that we are recommending before you today. Kind of where we started this process back in October of 2013, we did receive an audit from ISO for our building code effectiveness grading schedule. And what they do there is they come in and grade and evaluate our building department and determine how effective we are in enforcing building codes based on staffing levels, education, certifications, and also our building code, what family we're under. And one of the top things that they stated in that, as you can see when we received our survey, was that we were going to regress from a classification on the residential and commercial side from a 3 to a 9, and primarily due to outdated building and fire code families. And so they gave us an opportunity to respond to that on how we were going to try to maintain the level or at least improve from that number 9 without publishing it. And so what we did in February, we met with City Manager's Office, Fire Department, and we all got together to determine what our course of action was going to be and how we were going to respond to that. And what we determined is that we were going to pursue adopting the more current building codes, and that in order to do that, it was going to take a very strenuous community process. And what we've done, we started in February. We presented that plan to City Council, kind of talked about what was driving that. In March, we made our initial presentation to this board and kind of talked about our initial plan for recommendation and kind of what was driving that with the ISO audit. In April, we had our initial community meeting that was held at Mod Cobb, where we kind of rolled out some of what those code nuances were going to be, going from the 2003 codes to the 2012 code family, and we talked a little bit about that. Took some questions and answers, but really used that as a kind of a kickoff to the process. In May, we presented this to East Texas Builders Association at one of their monthly meetings as an outreach. Also in May, the fire department hired an ISO code consultant to come in and look at the overall PPC rating for the community. And through that process, they look at more than just building and fire code effectiveness. They also look at a number of factors dealing with our city's infrastructure and things of that nature, really in depth from a community-wide level. His initial kind of pre-audit, if you will, determined that our building and fire codes were significantly out of date, and we potentially could take in the community rating without adopting more current codes. There's the potential to take a hit on your insurance ratings. So he did confirm what our thoughts were on having an outdated building and fire code. In July, we met with Lead Co staff to present that to them because they're definitely a stakeholder in this process. We basically presented the code family and talked about some of what those changes entailed. In July, throughout July, we had individual meetings with commercial builders and contractors. We also met with local design groups to kind of talk about changes. We also had a second stakeholder meeting at the Builders Association where we discussed a little more. In August, the Chamber of Commerce hosted a lunch and learn to where we presented our findings and talked about the code. And this was primarily geared towards commercial lenders because they're also a stakeholder in this process. When we start talking about financial implications and so forth, you know, they're the ones that we're generally looking at having to convince to let us borrow the money and fund these requirements. We also met with the Chamber of Commerce Executive Board to present it to them. All of these different community groups are stakeholders in the process. They're community leaders who are very important in this step. We feel that this is not a city process. This is a community process that we're going through. It's not the building department or development services that is recommending this as a good thing. We are recommending it, but we're saying this is good for our community for a variety of reasons, and we'll get into that in just a little bit as well. On September 8th, we did, in coordination with the East Texas Builders Association, we had a consultant come in and provide about an hour and a half training, more specifically on the residential side of the code, and talked about in depth what some of the differences between the current code family and the 2012 was, and was able to answer a lot of questions. And I'll kind of let Skip talk about what those specifics were. Also, where we're going from here, we're presenting to you today under city charter and code. One of your functions is to not only hear variance request and appeals and decisions from the building official and fire marshal, but it's also to periodically evaluate our codes and also to recommend code changes as you see necessary. As we saw just a minute ago when you introduced yourself, you come from a wide array of professionals in the building and development areas, so you have the knowledge and the things that we need to make those specific recommendations. Where we go from here, it does require that this board make a recommendation for it to proceed. So if this board were to make a recommendation to proceed with these with the code changes, we would present that on October 9th to the City Council. We would give them an in-depth presentation and discussion. And just another opportunity for the community to see and hear it as well and be able to ask questions and provide comment. And then on October 23rd is when we would take it to City Council for action and hopefully adoption. That's kind of the process that we've gone through. As I stated, staff is recommending approval, and I'll let Skip talk about some of the nuances of the code. A lot of the comments that we've had, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of certain members, but it's been very positive from the community members and professionals that we've talked to. There's been a lot of people that have had a lot of questions, and to say that everybody agrees with every spec of the code, no, I don't think that any of us agree with every piece of the code, but we do feel that moving the code forward for adoption is what's best for our community, not just because we got audited by the ISO and that we're being forced to, but we feel that for the city of Longview to be sustainable and to be attractive for development in the future, that we feel that we need to have a more current code family. You know, we do receive calls a lot of times from developers and design professionals from outside of Longview that are designing to more current codes than we are. So we just feel that this is the right move for Longview. Like I said, there's a lot of things in the code that are good and that we agree with. Some of the things we're going to have to work through. It's going to be a learning experience for everybody. If the codes are adopted, what we're recommending is that they would take effect January 1st. That would give us a window of opportunity to educate people as far and getting ready to design to the new code, as well as once that January 1st date, if adopted, we would obviously have a time period to work with our developers and builders through the new code. Not to say that January 1st you better be building exactly to the new code. That's not our building department. That's not development services. Many of y'all have worked with us and understand that we're here to help y'all. We're a part of the process, and this is a community event and a process that we feel is good. So I'm going to turn it over to Skip and let him kind of talk about some of the nuances in the code and also some of the amendments, because we are making some amendments in the code, and let him talk about that, and then we can open the public hearing and really discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, once again, thank you for your time and your devotion to this very obviously important process, and I appreciate your work very much. There aren't very many amendments that we put into the new codes. The ones that were in there that we've been working with for a long time were very minor, and we've only added a couple of things. Obviously, one of the things that we've talked about over the last year has been the section in the residential code that mandates fire suppression systems in all new residential buildings, 1 and 2 family buildings. We've discussed the House bill that took that decision out of our hands. There's a legislature out there that says we can't adopt a code that mandates fire suppression systems in 1 and 2 family dwellings. So hence the amendment, that second one up there, that deletes that paragraph in the International Residential Code that mandates fire suppression systems. The Energy Conservation Code was another big stumbling block that was going to present areas of problems and economics to the community. And I don't feel that the state is going to be as heavy-handed with mandating any energy code after the 2009 version, which we're currently building under, and it's going to stay the same. The chapter in the residential code that dealt with energy conservation in the residential building, we have supplanted it with the same chapter from the 2009 version. So basically it's going to stay the same. There's not going to be any changes in there. I do have an amendment proposed in the residential code, in the electrical code, that will allow, in addition to the mandated wiring procedures, which, as you all know, require arc fault breakers and ground fault breakers to be on all house circuits. But we did add an amendment to the exemptions in there that will allow a single 120 volt single outlet circuit protected by conventional means for dedicated as a use for a secondary freezer or a secondary refrigerator. That there have been problems in the past with the arc fault breakers or the ground fault breakers, even in the garages, inadvertently tripping while somebody was away and lost food or whatever they had stored out there. So this is barely an attempt to make a provision for that. I don't feel that it lessens the intent of the code, because the rest of the wiring procedures are as written in the new 2011 NEC. We restructured the contractors' licensing categories. In 2006, I believe, we had restructured it to add a couple of categories to keep what we were doing in line with the Texas Residential Construction Commission, which was in effect at that time. The commission has since sunsetted, and we felt that having the renovation contractor's license and having more restrictive license categories for the builders was really not necessary. We reinstated the residential builder and also put the verbiage in the amendment that will allow a residential builder, if he's building a new house and a swimming pool, to build it under the same license, to not have to come and get relicensed as a swimming pool contractor. And we have several builders that are doing that now, and so that we felt like we just added the verbiage about accessory structures, which is how we permit swimming pools for residential construction now, to be inclusive in that category, just to cut down on the requirements and red tape and different permits and that kind of thing. So really, I mean, that's basically all that I can tell you about the amendments. We've hopefully done as much educating as possible, and that's an ongoing process. It has been with us with the 2003 code up to now. You know that never stops. And we will continue to do so. Like Michael said, the implementation period, like we're not going to at midnight, January 1st, everything is wrong. So we will continue to work with the builders and the design groups to learn as well for y'all as well as us as we go through the implementation process. Any questions? And I know there's a lot of questions, but I do have a speaker card. When I'm done, I'm going to bring this up to you, a speaker card from Mr. Tom Davis, who wants to make comments too.
Okay.
But
Okay.
any questions that I can ask while I'm up here?
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Shirley?
I don't.
No, sir?
Okay, then
Thank
I'm
you,
going to
Skip.
sit down and let Mr. Davis come up.
Okay. Now the floor is open for public hearing, comments, and questions.
Thank you. My name is Tom Davis. I have Tom Davis and Company. I've been building here for 44 years. Through this whole process, we've learned that there's some things that, albeit code and required by the state, it comes without some economic consequences. 1 out of 42 houses that burns is newer than 10 years old. Arc fault breakers in the whole house is going to cost between $750 and $1,300. So again, new construction is bearing the expense for a situation where 41 other houses aren't affected or improved, etc. And the only thing that the ETBA as builders has commented was the fact that we're having a real problem with arc fault breakers. I just built my son a house in Tyler. Tyler's 09 code, they've modified to where arc faults are bedroom only. 4 bedrooms, 4 arc faults, replaced 4 times. The consumer, my son, paid somebody to come and put in regular breakers because his kids got to have lights and they got to have plugs. So those things aren't perfected, and it's going to cost a lot of money to go through this process, but we understand that the electricians are under the 14 electrical code and it's required that way, so we understand there's no way around it, and we're not asking to make a life safety compromise. I just want it to be on record and be the fact that they're not perfected yet and we're having real problems with them. And the consumer is going to ask us and we're going to say it's required by code. But that doesn't do anything to improve the livability unless we can all get together and figure out what's going on with the arc faults. You know, every $1,000 you raise the price of a home in Texas, it's documented, it cuts out 40,000 buyers. And we know that most of us don't build the house that's affected by. But somebody does to get somebody in that first house so they can work their equity up and then come back around. So that's all I want to make a point about. The city's done a great job. The city's great to work with. In 44 years, I can tell you it's never been better than it's been the last 5 or 10 years to go in and pull a permit, get somebody to sit down, talk to you, look at an issue. If it's a problem, it's amicably solved to everybody's benefit. So thank you for letting me speak.
Any more comments? Okay, public hearing's closed. If there are no other comments, I need to make a motion to approve adopting 2014 International Building Codes and 2014 National Electric Codes.
2011.
Richard,
Yes, sir.
12. That's a
It's
It says
2012.
20.
first packet I did, 2012. I'm sorry.
Good time. Sorry, excuse me, 2012.
It's 2011 on electric code, is that right?
Okay, 2000, you did that wrong too. Okay, corrected. All right, I need a motion.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
All approved? Say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. All right. If there's anything else on the agenda, I would like to call a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll give a motion to
Okay, meeting adjourned.